You've got two choices. Which one should you get? The newly released Cloudsurfer 2 or the OG? Here's an answer. Get the Eclipse. Nah, I'm playing. My name is Aubrey. I'm a very average runner, simply trying to be less average by the day. And I'm good with being me. At the time of filming this, you guys have given me 19,930 subscribers. Actually, hold on, let me check. It might have moved up since the last 5 minutes. 19,933 subscribers, thank you very much. Thank you. Genuinely, I appreciate it. I thought I would give you a comparison to give you a bit more of information. What's the difference between these two shoes and why you'd want one over the other? The biggest thing when a new shoe comes out, and this goes without saying, is that is now £105 in the UK on the Sports Direct website. I'm gonna link it in the description below. £105. Therefore, the question is the new version worth it at £150? That's always gonna be the question. The previous version will always be cheaper, okay? The only question we have to answer is, does the 105 make it an obvious decision, or have the changes they've made in a £150 shoe, or just the fact that it's shiny and new, worth it at £150? I realize I don't normally ask this, but if you don't mind, please give me a thumbs up. It pushes this video out to more people, and consider subscribing to my channel. It would be great to hit 20,000 before the start of March, which marks 2 years of my YouTube channel as you know it now. I'm actually not gonna talk about the weight because my scales are giving me the most random things, so ignore all of that. One thing you should note though is there will be differences. From the reviews that I've watched, they're saying that the 2 is heavier, but from my weighings, this is 5 grams lighter. Just saying. And when I did my reel and my YouTube short, when I weighed them, this was 12 grams lighter. So I don't know. I'm just being honest with you. In terms of the stack height, again, I find this to be insignificant, but maybe until we talk about the ride of the shoe, it'll make sense. But the version 1 is 32 millimeters at the back and 22 at the front, giving you a 10 millimeter drop. Whereas this one, the version 2, is 32 at the back, 23 at the front, giving you a 9 millimeter drop, okay? So they've added some stack at the forefoot, but I will get to why that's confusing in a little bit. Anyway, let's talk about what these shoes actually are and why they're relevant, especially for my channel. You see, I like to talk to new runners, average runners, just normal people like me. And if I'm to be fully honest with you, this is the #1 shoe I would recommend to anyone who's just starting out running or trying to get more into running if you want to stick to the On Running brand. Simply because they've got a distinct look, you might want to stick to On Running. This is my #1 recommendation, all right? Key change that I don't want you to sit through the rest of this comparison video to understand, I'll say it right now. This shoe, the version 1, feels much more plush, much softer ride. The version 2 has been made somewhat firmer. Now, that's not a good or bad thing. The version 1 will be more friendly to an easier run. The version 2 makes now for a much more versatile shoe that you can now do something that you can control your pace with, your tempo runs. I wouldn't go as far as saying going all out speed, but the version 2 is going to be a shoe that's going to withstand a bit more pace than the version 1 does. However, the version 1 will be much more of a more comfortable ride. It's much more plush. And to be honest with you, that's where my preference is because of the kind of running I do. With that said, let's talk about the comparison in terms of the shoes side by side. You would have to be nitpicking, but the one thing I would call out in terms of the heel, I actually think the padding is somewhat similar. The only difference is when you put the heels side by side like this, you're going to be able to see that the version 1 of this heel has more of a fin at the back over here, whereas this is a bit more of a rounded touch. I like the version 2 for that because it's a bit more gradual. That feels a bit more comfortable than this, which is a bit more of a, I don't want to say a dig into the heel because it doesn't actually dig into your heel, but if you look at that, you will see what I mean. That's the heel. In terms of how much of a hold, they are both similar, nothing really to tell apart, okay? In terms of the tongue, I feel, and I like what they've done with the tongue actually. They've made the tongue a bit more refined. I will show you. If you look at this tongue, and I need to hold them carefully, that one looks a bit more streamlined. The version 2 here, this tongue is much more, I don't want to say much more slimmer, but it is not as plush as a version 2. So if that's something you look for, you're looking for something a bit more plush, I'd go with the version 1, but they've kind of refined the version 2 to be more of a streamlined feeling tongue. And I like it for that actually. I prefer the version 1's tongue the version 2's tongue compared to the version 1. Right, the lacing system. Much better system in the version 2, easy. Look, if you look at these eyelets, they're much more of these standard eyelets. And I criticized the version 1 for these eyelets here. I didn't understand what these string things are trying to do over here. I guess it worked, but I feel like they've improved it by removing that and going with something a little more conventional in the version 2. Actually interfered with the fit of my shoe. That dug into the top of my foot. They've still maintained that. But one thing that I have noticed that you need to see, it's not because I've done up the laces, but it feels like these knobs things here were a bit closer in the first version of the shoe. Whereas now, as you can see, they're outside a bit more of that lacing system and therefore not interrupting as much. But to avoid such complexities, I would like to see On Running simply do away with that. I think there are other ways of making the shoe look cooler and unique. Just my personal preference. All right, let's talk about the upper. Now, there are some changes that the website calls out in the spec sheets that says cite this being much more breathable, the version 2, but to be honest with you, I didn't notice anything significant. That could also be because we're still going through winter here in England, and therefore I didn't necessarily need it to be breathable. In fact, I needed the opposite. I can't really say the upper is that different. You probably have to take a microscope to it to notice that. In terms of the midsole, now I'm going to quote Mike Kofuzi's review. He talked of the people complaining about the squeaking of the midsole. I personally have never experienced that in terms of my Cloud Surfers. I haven't. But Kofuzi quotes saying that they've addressed that in the version 2 and therefore less squeaky within the version 2. The one thing I would like to talk about that maybe you definitely need to know is what I mentioned. This, the version 1, is much more of a plush feeling shoe than the version 2, which has been made to be a bit more firmer. That's the one thing I would say. So if you're looking for a more versatile shoe that you're gonna do your slower runs, but also do your tempo runs, depending on what kind of paces you get up to, your faster speed work, your version 2 is gonna be much more conducive to that as compared to the version 1. But the version 1, to me, feels much better because it's more plush, and I'm a sucker for max cushion shoes. Okay, let's turn these over and speak to the outsoles. Now, I like this. This, as you can see, has more coverage. Look at the heel. At the back over here, you're gonna see it has more coverage in the inside over here with less exposed foam. Again, if you look at the forefoot, they've done that. I complained, I did talk about it being very much exposed in the version 1 here. They've addressed that and they've addressed that very well. That now has much more coverage. So as I said, if you look there, much more coverage, as well as at the forefoot of the heel, you're gonna see much more coverage. Those are the kind of updates that we love to see. Now, I'll put the question to you. Do you think those upgrades are worth getting the version 2 at 150, or maybe stick with getting a cheaper version, which if you can still find it in the version 1. My personal opinion, and I pride my channel for doing this. When I compare two shoes, I tell you which one you should get. If my type of running and my build is similar to you, I would highly recommend you look at the version 1, because On Running nailed this shoe. The version 2 will be more suitable for that speed work. However, as a lifestyle option for walking, going around the town, doing your daily business, won't make a difference. There isn't much of a difference in terms of the appearance, in my opinion. I think they're both great shoes. Which shoe should you get? Just for the price difference, because you can now get this cheaper, I would get the Cloudsurfer 1. That's just my call. As always,